So if you're gearing up for a job interview, there's a pretty good chance you're going to run into this, the SHL General Ability Test. Today we're going to break down exactly what this thing is and, more importantly, how you can beat it.
If you've been asked to take this test, it can feel a little daunting, right? But look, you're not alone. It's a standard hurdle for some of the best jobs out there, in finance, consulting, you name it. But don't you worry, because knowing what you're up against is half the battle. So what is it really? At its heart, the SHL General Ability Test, which you might also see called the Verify G+, is a cognitive workout. Employers use it to measure 3 very specific reasoning skills they believe are great predictors of how well you'll actually perform on the job. Okay, now here's where the pressure really kicks in. You've got 30 questions in total, split across 3 different sections. The catch? You only have 36 minutes for the whole thing. That gives you just a little over a minute for each question, and that tight time limit is a huge part of the challenge. So, let's dive into those 3 cognitive skills. This is the absolute foundation of the entire test. It's what employers are really trying to get a read on. First up is inductive reasoning. This one is all about non-verbal logic, so you can forget words and numbers for a minute. This part of the test throws a bunch of abstract shapes and figures at you, and your job is to figure out the hidden pattern or rule that connects them all. To be more specific, they're looking at how fast you can detect those patterns, how you think strategically about different options, and even how good you are at spotting when something's just plain wrong in a sequence. It's a pure test of your logical problem-solving abilities. Next, we've got numerical reasoning. Now, don't panic. This isn't some crazy high-level math course. It's all about practical application. Can you look at a chart or a table, understand the story it's telling you, and then make some quick calculations based on that data, all while that clock is ticking away?
So you'll be expected to pull information from graphs, crunch percentages and ratios, and solve word problems using pretty basic arithmetic. Honestly, the math itself isn't the hard part. The real challenge is doing it quickly and accurately under pressure.
And the third and final skill is deductive reasoning. You know, this is your classic Sherlock Holmes skill. You're given a set of facts or rules, and your job is to figure out what conclusion logically has to follow. It's all about applying general rules to specific situations. All right, let's try one out. Here's a classic deductive reasoning setup. Read it carefully. All engineers are problem solvers. Some problem solvers are mathematicians. Just let that soak in for a moment. Now, based only on those 2 sentences, which one of these options absolutely has to be true? Don't make any assumptions, just use the logic you've been given. What's the one thing we can say for certain? The correct answer is C. And this is a perfect example of how it works. We know for an absolute fact that some problem solvers are engineers because the first sentence literally tells us that all engineers fall into that category. The other options, well, they might be true in the real world, but we just can't prove them from the information we were given. Okay, so now we know what they're testing, but the how is just as important. This isn't your standard static exam. The technology behind it is pretty slick, and it completely changes the game. The SHL Verify G+ uses something called Computer Adaptive Testing, or CAT for short. And this is a really big deal. It means the test literally adapts to you in real time as you're answering the questions. The process is actually pretty simple. You get a question right, and the next one gets a little bit harder. Get one wrong, and it dials it back and gives you an easier one. The whole time, the test is zeroing in on your true skill level. So why do they do this? Well, it's just way more efficient. It allows them to give you a shorter test, but the score they get at the end is actually more accurate and gives them a much more precise read on what you're capable of. All right, so you've battled your way through this adaptive challenge. What happens now? Let's talk about one of the biggest questions people have. What does your score actually mean? Your score isn't just a simple "you got X number correct." Instead, it's a percentile. This means your performance is being compared to a massive global group of other people who've already taken the test. Your score shows where you rank in that crowd. So what's a good score to aim for? What's the magic number? While every job is a little different, a result in the 80th percentile or higher is generally considered a strong performance. It means you did better than 80% of the other people in that comparison group. That should be your target. Okay, we know what the test is, how it works, and how it's scored. Now for the most important part. How do you prepare? Here's a clear, 5-step game plan to turn all this knowledge into a really high score. The strategy is really straightforward. First, understand the format, which, hey, you're doing right now. Second, practice with questions that are just like the real SHL ones so there are no surprises.
Third, you've got to work on your speed. Fourth, be honest with yourself about your weak spots and drill those areas hard. And finally, put it all together. Simulate the full timed exam to build up your stamina and your confidence.
And I'm going to say it again, never, ever forget that time pressure. With 36 minutes for 30 questions, you have an average of just 72 seconds for each one. That includes reading the question, thinking about it, and picking your answer. This is exactly why practicing your time management isn't just important, it's everything.
At the end of the day, the SHL test is a predictable challenge. It's definitely tough, but it's learnable. The key takeaway is this. With the right kind of preparation, you can walk into that test with confidence. Because as they say, it's practice that turns all that potential you have into a performance that actually lands you the job.